Hey there! Today I want to look at the signal chain of the MC-707 and MC-101. The goals are to give an overview of the sequence of effects and possible use cases, though I will only touch upon those lightly. Using external effects will be a topic of another time. With that out of the way, let's dive in. Effects can be applied to the sound at quite a few stages. We start with the EQs in the tone tracks, move on to one of the 90 effects that can be applied to the tone tracks as well, and then to the reverb and delay sends that are sent to the total effects. From there we progress to the total effects, which include a compressor, reverb, delay, an equalizer and a master effect. Everything starts with a tone, drum or looper track. Each tone track has 4 partials, that is, 4 sets of oscillator, filter, amplitude, 2 LFOs plus equalizers. Here you see the sound settings. Select a partial by clicking on a knob, C1, 2, 3 and 4, and then you can edit each EQ separately. So if I change a setting for partial 1, then you can see that when I press C4, there are different EQ settings. If you choose to, then you can set the EQs here in such a way that you will not need to touch EQ for that track or clip later. So if you really want to, the doorless journey starts here, because one important part of mixing can be done at a very early stage. Takeaway 1. Set EQs in the sound settings. Moving on, you see that the next item in the sound settings are the effects. Here you can choose one of the 90 effects that are part of the 707 or 101. If you want to, you can choose an EQ again, but there is really no need to, as I showed before. This might be a good point to use a delay or chorus effect, but depending on how finely tuned you need the effect, you might just get away with sending the signal to the internal total effects that we will look at in a second. So, unless it must be a time-based or modulation effect, this might also be a good place to put your compressor or limiter, especially if we talk about drums or bass. So you see that when I turn the encoder, you can step through all the effects on offer. You decide on the strength of the effect here by setting the effect's parameters. This, though, only works once, that is, you cannot set an effect per partial. You could, however, go very deeply into the partials and use the step sequencer that is part of each partial to program arpeggios, or use the inbuilt delay, or even create your own chorus by setting an LFO to affect the pitch of a partial over time. The takeaway is that you can shape the whole sound from the sound settings menu. The next step in the effect pipeline are the mix settings in the sound settings. Again, this is not tied to any partial, but to the whole sound. You can then choose how much of your signal you want to send to reverb and delay, and you can set your level and panning. You can go very deep with this and possibly even arrive at a situation where all your faders are set to the same level to get a balanced mix. If you mix like this, then you can easily change the tracks you are editing by pressing the select button, which is handy because you won't be kicked out of the sound setting menu. So you see, when I press the select buttons here, the sound settings change as well. Let me show you the block diagram from the manual. Here you can see that the pathway I talked about up till now is the same for tone tracks, drum tracks and looper tracks. You can also see that you can choose to send the signal to the external effects at different points in the pathway, as well as how they are routed back to the original chain. The manual clarifies that you can choose the out pathway and the return pathway independently from each other, so that you can use the track send here, but then route the return to any of the other places in the chain, like here or here. We will go into that in another video. You can also see that you can choose to send the audio after the reverb to the USB out, which makes sense that you can bypass the total effect section, though you do not need to do this, as the small switch here shows. You can choose between going out pre-total effects or post-total effects. You can also see the send-return stages in the total effect section over here. So let's go back to the machine for the total effect section. The audio from the 8 tracks is channeled to the total effects block, as I just showed. These put the finishing touches on everything that goes to the mix out. Again, you can choose one of the 90 effects that are built in. This is also the place where the reverb and delay sends of each tone come in, so this mixes in the time-based effects. Note that the reverb only has reverb effects, as you can see here, but delay is much more complex. So you see that when I turn the knob here, I can not only choose different delays, but also choruses and delay tremolo chains, which make this section very powerful. The total effects also contain a multi-band compressor and a 3-band parametric EQ. You can go into those in more detail when you hold Shift and click on the multi button like this. The block diagram shows them to sit after the effect, delay, reverb chain, so they are in just the right position if you earnestly want to master on this machine. If you really put in the effort, and motivation obviously, you could dial in the individual volumes per clip, set the EQs already in the tone tracks and move down the effect chain to simply record the mix to stereo. The settings for these effects are highly detailed, as you can see when I step through them with the cursor buttons. The only thing that is missing for my taste is a visualization of the waveform at some point, but for that you can just hook up a phone with the Spectrum Analyzer app to the mix or headphone out. Refer to the block diagram to make sure that you take an output that is post-total effect. And that's it for today. I hope there was something in there for you. Please leave a comment on how I could improve my videos, and see you soon. Bye bye.